You can do everything right and still disappear from your own life. This is what happened to me, and this is how I found my way back. I didn't feel lost because I had no foundation. I had a strong one. I grew up in the country. My family lived off the land in a lot of ways. And that kind of life teaches you something early. Things don't just appear. Food, shelter, work, discipline, responsibility. Somebody had to plant it. Somebody had to build it. Somebody had to carry it. And my mom and dad gave me a great runway. They gave me faith, work ethic, discipline, respect, and maybe most importantly, they gave me confidence. The belief that if I work hard enough, I could build a good life. And for a long time, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I went off to college. I had dreams, goals, plans. Like a lot of young people, I felt like the future was wide open. Anything seemed possible. The road stretched out in front of me, and I was excited to see where I would lead. And in many ways, life worked out. I built a career. I found the woman I would marry. Today, I have a wife and 2 children that I love more than I can explain, and I've been able to provide for my family. I remember standing in the driveway one evening after work. The kids were inside, dinner was waiting, my phone was still buzzing, the household needed attention, and I remember looking around for a moment and thinking, years ago, this is exactly the kind of life I hoped I would have. And yet something still felt missing. Not because I wasn't grateful, not because I wasn't happy, and certainly not because I wanted a different family or a different life. It was something harder to explain, a feeling that somewhere along the way, I had become incredibly good at maintaining life, but less connected to experiencing it. And that's what made this feeling so difficult to understand. Because feeling disconnected from yourself doesn't always happen when life is falling apart. Sometimes it happens while you're building it. Sometimes it happens while you're succeeding. Sometimes it happens while you're carrying responsibilities that genuinely matter. And before you realize it, so much of your energy is going towards maintaining the life that you built, that you stop checking in with the person who built it. For a while, it felt like I was writing my own story. Then somewhere along the way, life started feeling more like a system that I was managing. And that realization led me to question, how could someone build the life they're proud of and still lose sight of themselves inside it? When you're young, life feels like possibility. The future exists mostly as imagination. You spend your time looking forward, wondering what you'll become, where you'll live, what you'll accomplish, what kind of life you'll build. And I was no different. I believe hard work mattered. I believe discipline mattered. I believe character mattered. Those ideas weren't just things my parents talked about. They lived them. I watched them. I learned from them. And because of that, I always believed life was something you could actively participate in. You weren't just watching it happen. You were helping shape it. Every decision mattered. Every opportunity mattered. Every lesson mattered. And when you're young, that mindset creates momentum. You're moving towards something. Every year feels different. Every year feels bigger. Every year feels like progress. Then adulthood arrives and something strange happens. The things that once felt exciting slowly become normal. The job becomes routine. The responsibility becomes routine. The goals become routine. And eventually you stop thinking about where you're going because you're busy handling what already is here. I think this is the part people don't talk about enough. The assumption is that you'll accomplish enough things that you'll automatically be fulfilled. But life doesn't really work that way because achievement and fulfillment are not the same thing. Success and presence are not the same thing. You can be successful and still feel disconnected. You can be grateful and still feel disconnected. You can be blessed and still feel disconnected. And that's what made this experience so confusing. Nothing was wrong, at least not in the traditional sense. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't making terrible decisions. I wasn't experiencing some dramatic crisis. Life was moving. Work was moving. Family was moving. Everything was functioning. But underneath all of it was this strange feeling, a feeling that I wasn't fully participating in my own life, almost like I was watching it happen from one step away. Not absent, not detached, just not fully connected. And I think a lot of people know exactly what that feels like, especially the responsible ones, especially the dependable ones, especially the people who carry things, because carrying things changes you, and it should. That's a part of adulthood, but carrying things can also become your entire identity if you're not careful. And that's where the real problem begins. Nobody warns you about the maintenance years. When you're young, everything feels like construction. You're building, growing, learning, exploring. But eventually, construction becomes maintenance, and maintenance never ends. There's always another bill, another task, another deadline, another responsibility, another problem that needs to be solved, another person who needs something from you. And because these things matter, you handle them. You show up. You do what needs to be done. You become reliable. You become dependable. You become the person people can count on. And that's a good thing. Until it becomes the only thing. Because over time, something subtly starts happening. Your days become organized around obligations, not possibilities. Your attention becomes focused on maintenance, not imagination. Your energy becomes devoted to keeping the machine running, not exploring where the machine is going. And eventually, you wake up one day and realize you've become incredibly good at managing your life. But you haven't asked yourself in a long time whether that life still feels like yours. And that's where things started to get interesting for me, because I realized I wasn't experiencing a crisis. I was experiencing drift, not dramatic departure, a slow one, a quiet one, a nearly invisible one. The kind that happens over years instead of weeks, the kind that feels normal while it's happening. And that's what makes it dangerous, because you don't notice it until you've traveled a long distance. And by then, you're forced to ask a difficult question. If I spent all this time becoming the person everyone needs, have I forgotten to become the person I always wanted to be? I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, not because they're failing, but because they're functioning. And functioning can hide a lot. When you're struggling, people notice. When you're falling apart, people notice. When you're in crisis, people notice. But when you're quietly drifting while still doing everything you're supposed to do, no one notices. Not your coworkers, not your friends, not even your family sometimes. And often, not even you. Because you're busy, you're productive, you're accomplishing things, you're handling responsibilities. From the outside, everything looks fine, but internally something feels different. The best way I can describe this is you stop experiencing your life and you start managing it. You stop asking, what excites me? And start asking, what needs to be handled next? You stop creating. You start maintaining. You stop exploring. You start organizing. You stop participating. You start administering. And eventually the role becomes so familiar that you stop noticing you're playing one. Provider, parent, employee, leader, problem solver, caretaker. And all of those roles are important and they matter. And I've been many of them. I still am. But the danger comes when the role becomes bigger than the person. Because roles are useful, but they aren't you. They're something you carry. They're not your identity. And yet, over time, many of us start confusing the two. For me, the realization didn't arrive all at once. There was no dramatic breakdown, no movie scene, no life-altering moment. Just a growing awareness that I knew how to take care of everybody else's needs. But I wasn't sure when I stopped paying attention to my own. And that's when something clicked. The system wasn't broken. That's what made it difficult to see. The system was working. The bills were paid, the responsibilities were handled, the expectations were met. The calendars stayed full. The obligations kept moving. From the outside, it looked successful. but success and connection are not the same thing. And somewhere along the way, I had confused the two. I thought if I kept doing the right things, eventually I would arrive at a place where everything felt complete. But what if life isn't something you finish? What if it's something you participate in? And what if participation requires something we've stopped giving ourselves? Attention, reflection, presence, curiosity. Because when those things disappear, life starts feeling smaller, even while it's objectively growing. That's the strange part. You can be growing in your career, growing in your responsibilities, growing in your influence, growing your family, growing your income, and still feels like something inside you is shrinking. Not because life is getting worse, because your relationship with yourself is getting weaker. And that's the crisis, not failure, fragmentation, the gradual separation between who you are and the life you're living. And honestly, that's why I started the channel. Not because I had answers, because I had questions. Questions I couldn't stop thinking about. Questions that kept showing up in my own life. Around that time, I started noticing something. The questions I couldn't stop thinking about were always the same ones. Why do people overthink? Why do I overthink? Why are so many people exhausted? Why does modern life feel like survival? Why do we sabotage the things we care about? Why is it so hard to let go? Why do so many people feel disconnected from themselves? At first, I thought I was researching those questions. And looking back, I think those questions were researching me. Those were not content ideas, at least not at the beginning. They were personal questions. Questions I was wrestling with. Questions I was trying to understand. And maybe that's why the channel exists. Because I don't think I'm the only person carrying them. I think there are a lot of people like me. Men and women, people who handle what needs to be handled. Who show up every day. Who carry responsibilities. Who solve problems. Who take care of people. Who keep moving. And because they keep moving, they rarely stop long enough to talk about what they're carrying, or what they're feeling, or what they're losing. And that's why I wanted to make these videos. To say the quiet part out loud. To explore the questions most people are too busy to examine. To look at modern life through a different lens. Not because I have all the answers, but because I think discovery is easier when you're not researching alone. And maybe you felt some of these things too. Maybe you looked around one day and realized life feels different than you imagined it would. Maybe you're becoming so good at carrying responsibility that you've forgotten how to carry curiosity. Maybe you've become so useful to everyone else, you've forgotten what makes it feel like to be alive. If that's true, I want you to know you're not alone, because I felt that too. What I'm learning is that the answer isn't escape. It's not running away. It's not blowing up your life. It's not abandoning your responsibilities, because they matter. They all matter. My family matters. My responsibility matters. The people who depend on me matter. The life I built matters. The answer isn't less responsibility. The answer is more awareness, more presence, more intentionality, more connection to the person carrying all of it. Because I started realizing something. The things that make me feel most alive aren't always the biggest moments. Sometimes it's writing. Sometimes it's creating. Sometimes it's exploring an idea. Sometimes it's having a meaningful conversation. Sometimes it's simply paying attention, like really paying attention to my life, to my family, to the moment I'm in. And maybe that's the lesson. Not that we need to become someone else, but that we need to stop abandoning ourselves while we become who we're meant to be. When I look at this picture now, I don't see a kid who had life all figured out. I see a kid who believed he had a story to write. And maybe that's what I've been trying to remember all along. Not how to become somebody new, not how to start over, just how to stop handing the pen to everyone else. because somewhere along the way, I became so busy maintaining the story that I stopped writing it. And maybe that's what responsibility can do if we're not careful. It can convince us that being needed is the same thing as being alive. But they're not the same thing. One is a role, the other is a relationship with yourself. And maybe the next chapter doesn't begin with your responsibilities when they disappear. Maybe it begins with the moment you decide to pick up the pen again. Because when I look at that picture now, I don't see somebody who knew exactly where he was going. I see somebody who believed there were adventures ahead, and there were, and they still are. The truth is, I haven't disappeared. Not completely. Maybe I just got buried under the weight of responsibilities that matter. Maybe I got distracted by maintaining the life I was building. Maybe I spent so much time being useful that I forgot to stay connected to myself. But that person, he's still here. The kid in that picture is still here. The dreams are still here. The curiosity is still here. The vision is still here. And maybe that's true for you too. Maybe the person you thought you lost isn't gone. Maybe they're just waiting for your attention, waiting for your curiosity, waiting for you to remember they exist. Because maybe the goal isn't to abandon your responsibilities. The goal is to stop disappearing inside them. The goal isn't becoming someone new. Maybe it's reconnecting with someone you've known all along. The person holding the pen. The person writing the story. The person underneath all the roles. And maybe the next chapter begins the moment you decide to write yourself back into the story. That's the order of things.